Thank you very much. Another statement that humbles us in the face of people who've lived through this. Would you like to ask them some questions? I'll take questions from the floor. Yes, please. And then.
Thank you. The international community purports to want to prevent genocide. The Secretary General of the United Nations even has a special advisor to try and help him do that, who has the same name as the gentleman on the platform. I don't know if they are related, Francis Deng. I wonder if either or both of your panelists could say what they think the international community could or should have done to prevent the genocide that happened both in the south and the west of Sudan.
I think the international community, they need to act responsibly, because for 2 decades, the international community, they know there are plenty of documents is being signed by the President al-Bashir and the government of Sudan, but actually there is no any progress in the ground, whether in the south or in Darfur. People, they still suffering, and it's just signing peace on paper, but actually in the ground there is no any improvement. That's why the international community, they are very important to play rules and to bring pressure to the government of Sudan to act responsibly, because life is getting worse, and our people, they consist dangers day by day. So without international community, the life will get in very sad, and people will still suffering.
Adding to my colleagues and my brother from Sudan, to answer that questions, I hope Dr. Francis Deng, whom you mentioned, should tell the Secretary Generals and international community, according to him, and I quote Francis Deng, that what dividing us in Sudan is what untold. I hope he will tell the United Nations and the world community what he knows is dividing people in Sudan. Of course, the UN, even though I personally am not a fan of the UN, it have moral obligations, it have moral authority to live up, to uphold the documents that they have, and which I have in my hand today, the principles that guiding the world body, all the right and all the responsibility that the UN is supposed to be follow, it is here. But as I said before, that I'm very optimistic and nervous at the same time, because the UN is now in Sudan. The UNAMIS is part of the UN, even though the whole works was not done by the UN, was done by the others. But the UN is the one in charge now. We want them to do the right things. I was very troubling when the UN himself is the one trying to speak the Khartoum language. Yes, peace have to be found in Darfur, in which that we need a comprehensive peace in the entire Sudan. You cannot shift the war from the south to the west and assuming that things will be peaceful in southern Sudan. Khartoum have to be held accountable. Somebody in Sudan for the first time have to take the responsibility of the bad thing. The Sudanese in the government, they always take the credit for the good things. but no one ever took the responsibility or the bad things. Millions of lives perished in the southern Sudan. Hundreds of thousands in the Nuba Mountain, even nobody talk about it. Here in Darfur, for God's sake, how many million more do we need so the UN can act? UN have to act and act now.
Very eloquent answer. Just before I go to your question, I think one of the things that we are doing is that you are here, and you are not the United Nations. This is civil society in action. I think it was H.G. Wells, the author of The War of the Worlds, who said that civilization is a race between education and catastrophe. And maybe we've been losing that race. We all know the 20th century was the most destructive of all time, and the question is, are we stronger in the 21st century in our institutions? Most people around the world are not aware that the budget of the United Nations, the regular budget of the United Nations, and that includes in Geneva and in New York and in Vienna and Santiago, etc., is less than the budget of the fire departments of the cities of New York and London. The budget is less than the budgets of 5 or 6 major McDonald's outlets. So the international institutions that we look to, let's criticize them, let's try to improve them, but we are new in this business of building international institutions, so let's continue to build them, and in the eloquent way that my colleagues have mentioned, let's not despair of the UN, but rather seek to make it an awful lot better. There's a question over here, please.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. My name is Abla Mahdi from Hawa Organization, Women Organization Initiative in Sudan, 1983. Really, I hear 2 very sad stories from our brother from Darfur and south of Sudan. If really this story, it is a real story, really it is a very sad. But I would like to raise a big question to my brother. If there is genocide in Darfur, the international community itself and ICC itself, they can't prove that there is genocide in Sudan. And you see, also, I would like to raise another question. You know the number of displaced people from Darfur, inside Darfur, more than the refugees from Darfur in Chad camps. Why? If they kill them like that, if they cut them like pieces, we are a human being. Do you think in Sudan, people like that, they kill each other in pieces? Is this the truth? From what time, from what date you are going back to, you are go to UK, United Kingdom? From what time? How many years you are out from Sudan? Do you believe that they are put them alive and put them and burn them? Do you think like that happen in Sudan? If happen, why they can't improve it by ICC? Why it not improve it by international community? I would like to raise a big question. What's going in Gaza, Palestine? Is this a genocide or what? We should do justice. I ask the international community to do the justice for the world, not only to say that the genocide in Sudan, genocide in Darfur, because the other some country, those large country like USA and this country, they don't like Sudan. More also because for our resources, they looking after our resources. They would like not for us not to live on peace. Therefore, they said we have genocide. I am sure that there is no genocide on Sudan. Really, I am sure, as a Sudanese, no genocide in Sudan. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me just say before I give the floor to my guests to answer this. curiously, I was the chair of a similar panel here last year, and we talked about genocide in Sudan, and there was an entire room full of people like you, madam, shouting at us and asking that the international community prove some of its allegations. It's coming, and we're not intimidated by that. But I think our guests here will answer what you have to say a lot better than I will.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for our organizations. Actually, it's simple, and the fact, since this war began in Darfur and that took place in 2003, the government of Sudan, they tried to lie to international community while our people of Darfur, they being killed, raped, cutting them in pieces, tortured them, taking them keeping them in the prisons. And many hundreds of thousands of people, they have been killed and raped, women systematically raped. This is evidence you cannot destroy it. Other thing, over 600,000 of people, they've been killed in Darfur. What do you think is not a genocide? What do you think when you see the image, you are as our organization, which is, you know exactly what is going on. We are not talking just today of the recent time. Other thing, about the refugee you're talking about, there is hundreds of thousands of refugees today between Chad and neighboring Chad and Darfur. They've been dying, result of hunger, suffering, and torturing, and they've been living in middle of nowhere. What do you think those refugees, my international community, they going to help them? Other thing, 2.7 million people, refugees, in Darfur today, and other 2.5 million inside Sudan. Those refugees, they are all from Sudan, Sudan and Darfur, and this is what systematically the Sudan government trying to destroy those people, and the Sudanese government has got an experience for their not uncommitment and not cooperation with the international community, and that's why the genocide has been taken place. Regarding the peace agreement and peace sound agreement, it's not a peace, but a sound agreement they have done only just because of their personal interest for the coming elections, and that's why they want to win the support of the group, which is they said we are signing peace with the Darfurian group, but actually in the ground today, there's hundreds of people, they've been dying and fled, and you know that exactly. So you cannot deny what is going on for Darfur. Only you have to pray for hope and equality, and people has to return eventually.
Mr. Deng.
Let me add some things, like former presidents Ronald Reagan said, here we go again. My sister Howard, probably being a so typical Sudanese, I wish you would have been in the shoes of the women in the southern Sudan to know. I wish you would have been in the shoes of the women in the western Sudan, the region of Darfur, to know it and to feel it. But probably you wouldn't feel it because you probably sitting in Khartoum or somewhere peaceful in a crystal house in the center of Sudan. We all know for facts as Sudanese the hypocrisy and in denial of the truth that if somebody said this is a light, you as a Sudanese, you will not accept it, you will say no because it did come from somebody else. And that's why you're mixing apples with orange. What happened in Sudan is all we know, and you know it very well. In the south, when brutality, genocide even that the world didn't call it by the right names, taking place. The Northern Sudanese, peaceful like you, always call it Zaman al-Hawadis, which is time of incidents. You don't have incident, my fellow human being, 17 years. Against, you use another word in the Southern Sudan when you are slaughtering 2 million Southern Sudanese, Mashkalt al-Junub, which is southern problems. And we heard that again when you turn your arms against your fellow Muslims in Darfur and you call it Nahab al-Musallah. We know it for facts. We all Sudanese. But you cannot fool people all the time. Time has come for us as Sudanese to realize that there is something wrong took place. You may not agree with the figures, but let me tell you, Bashir himself will disagree with you because he admitted when he said to the world that 200,000 is exaggeration, 400,000 is exaggeration, only 9,000. How do we call these 9,000? You're speaking like that because you didn't have a loved one among 9,000 Bashir talk about. Thank you.
I have several questions here on Sudan, but just before I come to them, since we're talking about genocide in different parts of the world, let me add this about Bosnia. When I first arrived there, I was one of the few civilians, and one spent a lot of time in the cellars because the city, unprotected, was taking an average of 1,000 shells a day fired at the unprotected city of Sarajevo. So one spent a lot of time in the cellars with dust falling on one's hair and walls trembling and so on. And I got to listen to a lot of the discussion between local Sarajevans, and in my own mind divided them into realists and idealists. The realists, and this may pertain to Sudan also, the realists, as I saw it, said this can't continue. Civilization will put a stop to it. The UN will put a stop to it. NATO will end it in 24 or 48 hours. Those were the idealists, I'm sorry. The realists said, no, it'll take a little longer. You have to have bureaucratic meetings of the UN Security Council or the NATO Council and so on. It'll probably take a week. And the others said, if it takes a week, we'll all be dead. It went on for 3.5 years before the international community used force. And now Mr. Radovan Karadzic is in the dock in The Hague saying it never happened at all. So it's hard not to draw similarities with Sudan. Last year when we had this meeting, 3/4 of the room shouted at us that we were imagining things. Well, the way forward is to press on with due process and the examination of the evidence. And the evidence, I'm afraid, Madam, shows very terrible things have happened in Sudan, as my guests have clearly attested to. Now, the question I have here is, why has the African Union, from somebody here, refused to pursue due process against Omar al-Bashir? Would anybody like to answer that? Why has the African Union failed to act in regard to the president of Sudan?
The fact is President Bashir has been already named as a criminal, and he been wanted by the International Criminal Court to face justice. And the inspector of the ICC, he said, Omar Bashir, he should face justice, whether it be just a matter of time to be captured, and he has to face justice like what he has done to my people in Darfur and also to Sudan, to South of Sudan, and many issues going on. Meanwhile, the African Union, they came to protect the civilian in Darfur, but there has got no order to catch President Bashir. But President Bashir, it's just a matter of time, he will be captured and he will be faced justice for what he has done for the Sudanese and Darfurian people.
I think most African nations, they follow the Roman statutes. Some of them said it because there is the pressure from the madman from Libya. But when he was a chair, he went and twisted arm of the African rulers, not leaders. And some of them said it that since they are not signatories to the Roman statutes, then they will not follow it because they are not. And I agree and I disagree with them. And some of them had their own reasons why they cannot pursue that, because some of them are guilty of some kind of atrocity in their own home. But we should not forget there are countries in Africa who came out very clearly that if Bashir stepped foot in their country, they will arrest him. And he should not be the case that we talk about. If he is not guilty of some things, why he should not go forward and clear his name? And that is all we need.
Thank you. Here's a question which seems to be in line with some of our previous discussion. It says, if slavery and genocide against southern Sudanese exist, then how come more than 1.5 million Southerners fled to Khartoum seeking security and shelter from the war? When slavery in America, and I'm reading this, I think it's during the period of slavery in America, did slaves from the South escape to the North, unquote. Actually, the answer is yes. Let's go on to the next question. This says, I don't know who this is from, it says, I'm reading, how can we regulate, is the word, it says here, religion, so that religion won't be misused as a tool for discrimination and killing?
Okay. To answer this, basically, the Sudan government, actually, they commit this killing and murder to destroy people culture and people life, because Sudan is not an Arab country. Sudan, it is an African country geographically and historically, and they killed the south of Sudan people for up to 2 million people, because they saying the problem it is between the south and between the north, and problem is for this religious. But later on, when they tried and they cannot find the destiny to solve any problem with the south of Sudan, they turn their guns to their own fellow Muslims from Darfur, and this is what the challenge. How come the government of Sudan is turning up their guns to their own people in Darfur, which they are Muslims? As I have to mention, Darfurian people, they are up to 90% of them, they are Muslims. And they turn their gun, which they killed over 600 people and destroy life of 8 millions. And now they trying to solve problem one another. And there really is, because the government of Sudan, they're Arab and they're not originally from Sudanese even, because they are follower which they came to settle in the 19th century. And this when the British withdraw and they left power in their hand, and then they want to destroy the African culture remaining in Sudan, and they start to destroy Darfur as Muslim region, which is the western of Sudan, to transfer the Arab culture to the African, which they believe they are not Arab, and to destroy the American history for centuries. And this is what the real problem for the Sudan government to commit this crime against us. And also the discrimination is playing part for this genocide happening in Darfur, because Darfurian people, they were black and they were not Arab, and they have got their own culture and own identity, and that's what the real problem began.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deng. Religion?
You know, as victims, where the religion was used as a tool, as an umbrella to savages slaughtering my peoples, I always ask the same questions which is being posed to me now. How comes that the others whom are far away from Sudan, who happen to be good Muslims, to stand and turn a blind eye when their religions are being used by the governments in Khartoum as an umbrella to commit the gross atrocity, the gross murderous. 2 million Southern Sudanese was slaughtered in the name of jihad. Everybody in Sudan, everybody in the world knew it and turned a blind eye. This question I ask it over and over. Where are the good Muslims? And even I go further, how can you have a moral religion-wise to be bystander when your religion is being used to commit the evil acts by the government of Khartoum? And this question needs to be answered by anyone with a good conscience as a good Muslims, that to distance herself or himself from the evil government that uses the religion to commit the evil act.
Thank you. There's a question here from Mr. David Littman of the Association of World Education. Yes. And he says in February 1999 he was the representative of Christian Solidarity International, I think in southern Sudan. And he says, I would like to ask, and then he ran out of time or paper, so if you would like to...
I'm here.
Please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Good. Yes, I was then the representative and introduced the late Dr. John Garang to Mary Robinson at the time when all these horrors were taking place for more than 10 years.
And I have two questions to ask, but I would like to point out that I was not surprised to hear the representative from the Khartoum regime on our left there speak as she did, because when Dr. Gaspar Biro was the special representative on Sudan, he was threatened in 1994 with death simply for asking Sudan to bring its legislation into accord with the covenants they had signed and ratified. My question now concerns the question of the jihad that was declared several times by Bashir, and which Dr. John Garang, when he came to the United Nations in 1999, before he was ruled out of order by the Sudan, tried to explain that why is it that the crimes that are being done in the name of jihad in the Sudan are not being recognized. And at that time, curiously enough, the former Prime Minister Al-Mahdi also wrote to Mary Robinson explaining that slavery was inevitably a result from jihad. And this was a Muslim speaking. So my question is, when the jihad is proclaimed, we're speaking about the Arab North, the Arab Sudanese, declaring a jihad against the
African Sudanese. Why, as Simon Deng has said, there has been no reaction from the United Nations over all the years, and now again it's Darfur, and we were the first, the Association for World Education in 2003, to take the defense of those in Darfur. This time they're Muslims, but again it's the Arab North who are declaring the jihad against their African brethren. So the first question to Simon would be, how many slaves are there still? CSI managed to help free up to 85,000 of them. How many are still remaining in slavery in the north? And the second question refers to the racial situation. When will the United Nations recognize that we have here, as one of the special rapporteurs said very clearly, we have a case of racism, the Arab North against the African South. And the last thing I would like to say is, if you want to know more about slavery in the Sudan, you just have to consult Churchill as a young reporter when he went in 1899, and he describes the same slave trade that has existed from the 8th century until today, which is more than 1,000 years. Why is that not being condemned every day at the United Nations Council here? Thank you.
Mr. Deng, and then we have a question over here.
Thank you. Let me answer the first questions in part. Of course, as you mentioned, Sadiq al-Mahdi, or you call it Sadiq al-Mahdi, we call it Sadiq al-Mahdi, we call it Sadiq al-Mahdi. He himself, when he was Prime Minister in Khartoum, was interviewed by the Canadian journalists after 2 months in his office about the slavery, and in which he admitted, yes, slavery still exists, and he went on to give a definition, the reasons why the slavery exists, and he blamed it on war. He went on to explain that usually the Arabs will go and capture the African kids, and the Africans will come and capture the Arab kids, which he lied by saying that we never have a victim have a power being in a position where he or she cannot say no to his masters and will go and take anything from the master. He lied there. The numbers of the slavery up to now, nobody for sure can come and give the accurate counts. What we have now, it is what is being documented by this government, the government of Bashir, through the organization CIWAC, put together by them to do the works so that they will not call it a slave, they call abductees, people being abducted. In that book, there are more than 8,000 documented by the government of Khartoum, the government of today. But the numbers can be within 10 of thousands. Nobody knows. Some of them are no longer being enslaved because they already converted to Islam. And that is an offer which was given to me when I was a child. If I want to be treated like a human being, I have an offer on the table to convert, give an Arab name, and become their son. We have most of the southern Sudanese slaves. They already, even some of them, I know for a fact, when and got education, even they are now holding position in which they cannot come and talk about it. The other things of the races, of course, Khartoum is the most racist government ever God has created. Simply because I know it for facts. There was a law being designed by the government. And for those who knows Arabic, those who try to defend Khartoum, can they explain to us the law of Kasha, Gawanin al-Kasha. What is that those laws designed for? Those laws are designed to clean the city from the black peoples. Take them back to the war zone, because Southern Sudan used to be called as a war zone, to be killed. Or those who want to stay in the north, then there are options, which is they will convert to Islam. And even Sadiq himself said it. Why should we worry about peace? Because he signed peace with the Southern groups before he became a prime minister. When he became a prime minister, he changed it. And he came to say that Roy Ghayrat, which is the things he changed because he became a prime minister. We should not worry about the peace, because the Southerners are dying. Those who will come to the north, they will enter to Islam, and that is exactly what we are here for. So Khartoum is a racist, and you can see of what happened in Darfur, those who are being slaughtered, all of them, the Four, the Masalit, the Zagawa, these are the African tribes. Those whom you call today as Janjaweed, there is no such thing in Sudan called Janjaweed as a tribe. These are the Arab tribes. These are the Arab tribe was armed by Khartoum, then not to kill people in Darfur, to kill people in the southern Sudan and take the kid into the slavery. So racist, Khartoum is on the top of it. The numbers of the slaves, nobody have a definition. And I wish Dr. John Garang would have yet die soon, because that was something in his own agenda that he have to pursue to address the issue of the slavery in Sudan, because according to him, not me, when jihad was declared, jihad is part of the war, and this is what you address. And Sadiq al-Mahdi himself, we have it on tape. For anyone who wanted to see it, I will give it to him.
Okay. Thank you. I have, first of all, some written questions, but first a question over here, and then from the gentleman here. Madam.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. My name is Amer. I'm independent. My background is law and anthropology by education. I appreciate very much having listened to both gentlemen at the panel. I believe that they're both very personal experiences, and they're both very difficult and sad situations, indeed. The narration of Mr. Simon Deng touches on many issues, one of which is Islamization, Arabization. And the question on that would be where and how, when you are in Sudan, in Khartoum, having been a humanitarian worker myself in Sudan, there are churches in Khartoum, in neighboring towns, and church bells do ring and people do go to church. So Islamization, Arabization, I question that. And in the south as well, there are churches and mosques side by side, whereas unlike in some Western countries, you can't even have your mosques up, but we won't go into that. There is no mention has been made of tribal conflicts which exist between tribes in the south, tribal conflicts which exist between tribes in the west, tribal conflicts which exist between tribes in the north and in the east. So north, east, south, west, central all have tribes. Sudan is a country with many tribes, as we know.
Sorry,
and
can
therefore,
I ask what your question is?
Yes, of course. Mr. Simon Deng did mention, if I just may, Mr. Simon Deng did mention that we need to remember the the principles guiding the world body. I assume those you're mentioning are referred to the UN Charter, which is itself an outdated and colonial document. Unfortunately, if these are your references, we need to go way beyond that, because both the panelists appreciated their experiences are very difficult, but they have been out of Sudan for very long. Sudan has moved on. And so what is it exactly that they propose concretely to do where they're sitting from. Because for a fact, we know, and I know, that Southern Sudanese in Sudan question their compatriots from the south and their compatriots from the west who have not been part of the struggle in the country.
All right.
So what is it that they concretely are proposing? Because these are personal experiences.
What concrete proposals are made? Let me wrap several questions together, and we'll come back to that and ask what concrete things can be done. I don't agree, of course, that these tremendously important documents like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is truly a Magna Carta, is ever out of date. Yes. I understand. But we will... colonial, indeed, right. Actually, I think... Well, anyway, let's come to the question over here, and then we'll refer back to these points at the end, and we have a time problem. Sorry.
Oh, yes. Mr. Chairman, I don't know you, Mr. Chairman, but I developed great respect for you. You express opinions very close to mine about the UN. And Mr. Mortimer here also is like you after me. I retired before you joined the UN. But I'm very sad, Mr. Chairman, because when I come to a human rights meeting, I leave my nationalism, my religion, my beliefs behind. And I come here to try to talk, to find a solution for these tremendous problems that we have in the world. I'm now emotional, I can't even talk. Mr. Chairman, I have been in Sudan. I was representative of Humanitarian in Sudan for 2 years in the 70s. Maybe I have seen Mr. Simon Deng as a young man in Southern Sudan. Both Southern Sudanese and the Sudanese in the north are lovely, tender, wonderful people. The problem are the politicians. I'm becoming again emotional, excuse me. The problem, Mr. Chairman, is the people who seek power and seek money and want to use the innocent people for their own ends. The problem is fanaticism, bigotism, and extremism. Whether it's Islamic, whether it's Jewish, whether it's Hindu, whether it's Christian, doesn't matter. These are the problems we have. And the biggest problem in Sudan, Mr. Chairman, is the fundamentalist regime, Islamic regime, who is trying to impose its position on the people of the whole Sudan. The northern Sudanese don't like it either.
And your question, sir? Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have any question to make. I'm making a statement. Please allow me one more minute.
Of course.
Mr. Chairman, my question is that the problems in Iran, in Chechnya, in Uyghur, in China, in Tibet, they're all in Sudan, in southern Sudan, in Darfur, they're all the same, they're of the same nature. There are people who, the majority of people in the world are good people. The people who are of the power and money, they are to suppress the good people of this world, and we are coming here and fighting among each other. I'm sorry, my sister from Sudan, that you allowed yourself to be so difficult and so violent against these two gentlemen who are just forget about the genocide. If it is one woman is raped in southern Sudan, if one woman is raped in Darfur, that's enough for me. I don't care about definition of genocide, whether it's a genocide or not. If a child is torn apart, one child is torn apart, for me, this is genocide. I don't care about the thing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm afraid we have to come to the last few minutes now. I have 3 questions left, but I'll just blend them together. Basically, they ask, is there an increase or decrease in tolerance in Sudan? Is any progress in that psychological sense being made? And 2 of the questions deal with whether there will be a renewed outbreak of, major outbreak of fighting. And I'd ask the two gentlemen on my right and my left to comment, but very briefly on this. Mr. Deng.
Yes, when it's come to the progress, because of the works of the people of goodwill, as I mentioned in my remarks, yes, there are progress, but still there are a lot of works need to be done, and this is what I always encourage my fellows from Darfur to reunite, to become one group so that they will articulate their problems so that these evil acts have to be removed as soon as quick as we can, because we cannot wait for tomorrow for another victims.
Thank you.
And the other ones, which was?
Whether violence is going to, or large-scale fighting will break out again.
Yes. The Southerners are the one upholding on the CPA which has been signed. Believe it or not, my sister can deny it and can deny it, but he can deny it here. If that promise will not stand, the war is going to be, and it's going to be a brutal, and it's going to be dirty, and believe it or not, you are not going to deny that that war is going to be in wherever you are.
Mr. Hesabu.
I think what Mr. Simon has said is very clear. What we want actually this government to face their justice, because the government is distrust for his own people. And for years, there have been the same and similar issues that are going around, and there is nothing has been improved, only the part which they are believing in the north side of Sudan, even the capital, but anyone imagine just out of Sudan, of Khartoum, in just 20 miles, you will see exactly horrible, difficult situation down there, and the government of Sudan, they are not agree. So we just asking for hope, and people need to be protected more and more. For the last thing, for the next 9 months, I think there will be the referendum in South Sudan, and I think the international community should put pressure and attention, because lives they will be getting worse if there is no any solution in the ground. I think there will be more bloodshed. So we just asking for hope and praying for peace and people to live in peace.
Thank you very much. It just remains to conclude. We're out of time, if you don't mind. Just a very quick question, very quickly.
Yeah, very quickly. In French. Pensez-vous que avec le régime
do you think that with the regime in Sudan, which took power through a coup and commits massacres, well, do you believe that the current electoral process could lead to regime change? Could a democratic country appear in Sudan?
So we hope that this regime will be totally changed, because of this coming election. Basically, the people, they praying for hope for this regime to be changed and to be real democracy, and people, they have to access their right. But if the situation is still in Sudan the same like what's right now, and this government, they win the elections, I think the situation will be more threat, and it will be similar as what's happening in Iran now. So this is what we want, just this government to go, and we have democracy and freedom. So this is what we need.
Thank you. Mr. Deng.
Yes, of course, I think there is, as I said before, Sudan is a crossroads, and there is a road of hopes, and there is a road of destructions, and probably this election that we see, even that this government will do everything that they can to pressure others to win them on their side, because they have everything. They have the means, they have the security, but eventually the right of the people should not be denied. There is a crime being committed by the government of Sudan, and there is a crime need to be resolved, and all of us, we the Sudanese, our intention is not to go after everybody to be killed because they killed somebody. We have to learn how to forgive so that we will be in peace, because Sudan has been in war even before all of us here was born, and is still in war today. We need peace in that country, and believe it or not, if this peace did come to South Africa, I'm very optimistic and nervous. Peace will come to Sudan, but when?
Thank you. It remains only for me to thank our guests, whose very moving words say more than any of us can. This is how we learn, because these are witnesses who've actually lived through these things. Just to conclude, let me say that, of course, genocide, by its nature, is something that is a danger to people in all countries, not just in the Sudan. I've been through 4 wars and 11 or 12 conflicts, and to my mind, the roots are always the same: fear and ignorance. And they go hand in hand. There's a saying in one of the countries where I served: if you point a finger at others and accusing them, you have 3 fingers pointing back at yourself. We can only work on ourselves and on our own societies. And when we are so sure of ourselves that we can say, yes, in court, I can swear as a witness that this word says chair, bear in mind that another person can look at it from this angle and say, I can swear it's a blank piece of paper. There can be several truths existing side by side, and it's that kind of tolerance that, of course, Sudan and many other places need. Let us all please thank our guests for their time. Thank you.